Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I am your host, Solaris BlueRaven. My wonderful guest tonight is Steve E. Asher. And Steve, it's always a pleasure to have you on board with me. It's been a while since you've been on. I know you were on Hyperspace. And let everybody know once again how to access your website and get your books and all that wonderful stuff.
Sure, and again, I really appreciate you guys backing me and having me on it. It really means quite a bit. As for my website, you can find me under, and this is all lowercase and together, Steve E. Asher, and it's stevieasher.com. You should be able to find the books Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary and Hauntings of the Western Lunatic Asylum through Simon & Schuster, also through Permuted Press, which is my publishing house, and all the ebooks and all that stuff, through Google, and you can find it on Amazon and Books A Million and all the different outlets. So, and as of following what's going on with the House of Asher, obviously you can go to Spreaker and punch in House of Asher, which is also carried through on YouTube on Conflict Radio, and I'm always branching out, trying to get into more stations and affiliates, and WPKY in Princeton, Kentucky, and those are the guys that carry me here momentarily in Western Kentucky. So
excellent.
That's what I'm doing.
Wonderful. And you haven't been really doing this that long. How many years have you been doing this work? I mean, the investigations.
Now, which
and all
work are we talking?
Well, the supernatural stuff.
Well, I mean, as actually formatting a team was 2006.
Oh, wow.
But, as of researching it off and on, and yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Well, one of those things, too, you also have to, again, it's sort of, it ebbs and flows. There was times when there'd be more things to investigate and whatnot, and then also downtime, stuff like that. I'd had, a dear friend of mine pass. There was a team member. It took a lot of wind out of me, and really maybe, consider not doing it at all. It was one of those things. It made it extremely real. But I think overall, in time, it made me go, well, I think the work is necessary. It's one of those things where it, as long as you keep yourself grounded and you don't get too big for your britches, as we say in this part of the world, it's a healthy thing. If you go into it with the right motivations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean. No, all I was going to say was, So I mean, as of the team, which is, I probably should say the name of the team is the Caldwell County Paranormals. We didn't want to call it, Ghost Hunter or Ghost Wranglers or whatever. I mean, we're not wrangling anything. We're not actually, we're looking at, we're learning from. It was probably closer to a research group meets sort of an esoteric, book circle.
Mm-hmm. And what's the name again?
Honestly, more than anything, there wasn't a lot. It's the Caldwell County Paranormals, and because obviously we're from Caldwell County, that's where the little town of Princeton is that I live in, and so it was very, at the time it was very regional. It was, we didn't really go beyond the county, and then we started branching out, going further and checking out other parts of the state and going beyond the state. So we've been pretty lucky in it, obviously with working with special needs.
It's awesome. I think that's great.
People during the week, and then books and all that needs to be covered up.
Mm-hmm. Right. And is there a number? So is there a contact? I guess it's on your website, right? If people want to reach out to your group or you for an investigation.
Oh yeah, I should probably give you my email too. I apologize. Mm-hmm. This is all lowercase together, and it's ILASHERS@yahoo.com. That's eyelashers at yahoo.com. And of course, you can contact me there. You can contact me through my Facebook. I have Facebook. I have Twitter. I have all that different stuff going on. And not just for the books, but also for the show, and also for the ghost team, and also for different stuff like that. Because I'm also in the processes of trying to get some of the stuff that I've written onto different sort of media outlets, Netflix, or be it whatever, would definitely be open for that if anybody out there is listening. Plug.
Oh, that would be nice. So have you done a documentary? You haven't really put one together yet, have you, or anything like that, or no?
Well, No, I mean, not as of yet. It's one of those things that I honestly, you always joke about a radio voice, but I hear the quirky little southern tone in my voice, and I also hear, know, I'm thinking they don't want to hear, Jed Clampett give them
Oh,
give a
that's not
narration
true
for
at
this.
all. You have a great speaking voice.
But,
No,
well,
no. And I'm telling you, I love this. I love the Southern accent. Seriously, no,
well,
you sound great. You
well,
really
you
do.
know,
I'm not just
I,
saying that. Go ahead.
well, I again, I'm the worst at taking compliments, but thank
It's
you.
okay.
But no, I'm not against it. I mean, I've debated on going into some of the places like may have mentioned to you about when I was out investigating out in Eastern Kentucky, places like the slave furnace where they're either an escaped slave during the time, either tried to hide in there or was forcefully put in there with blocks put in and burnt to death. I thought about doing a documentary on that particular thing just because it was so insane.
Right.
Because they still talk about hearing activity there and seeing shadows and whatnot. And I may give that a hand, just right down, very much involved in book 3 and book 4. And then, as I talked about, I was working on some county books, that has to do with all the counties of Kentucky. And then I'm looking into some, communications from beyond the grave and, all that kind of spooky stuff that ties in with the paranormal. So I found the time.
Yeah, exactly. I would think that your books would make awesome documentaries if you could put them in some kind of a miniature formula. That would be very, very cool. So just something to think about down the road, I know you are busy, though.
Well, sure. I mean, and it's just a thing, of course. I have that. I think it's just a thing that when I say artist, it's definitely with the song. You kind of go, you put your heart into it, you do this, and then you kind of it's like pushing Moses out in the little reed boat. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, good Lord, how are people going to take it?
Funny.
And then,
but
it's just one of those
great
things,
work. Your work's awesome. Go ahead.
Obviously, well, no, I mean, and thank you. I mean, I do my darndest, and I know I'll probably come off kind of folksy, and I'm sure backward because I'm sure I am. But it's just a thing where you just don't know, And thank goodness I've had very good responses from folks overall, and some people that's just not their cup of tea. But I definitely would like to do something like that, and at least maybe do like a technical advisory on some episode for some sort of paranormal thing, just to get out there and do it, because I'm not necessarily old at this point. I mean, I'm 48, I'm getting there, but it's a thing where I would love to be able to do that. I'd love to be able to just kind of go, yeah, I've been blessed to be able to do this, and that, and maybe have a little screenplay put out for a small movie, and maybe straight to DVD, but that's okay.
I actually think it would be an awesome idea, and I like to. I always like to. Yeah, I like to encourage new authors. Well, you're not necessarily new, but you know what I mean. I like to encourage people in this this kind of venue to go forward with what they have, insofar as putting it out there for documentary or potential film. Because to me, I'm so burned out on mainstream that the mainstream videos and all the things that they put out. I think that I'd rather see beings like you out there versus all the stuff that's going on out there in Hollywood. So just a heads up. So keep doing that. And also I was going to ask you, you did touch on shadow beings when you were a child, or you apparently saw some shadow beings. And to me, that kind of connects to the Men in Black. And a lot of people who have had shadow activity as children are usually very, very connected to UFO activity. I was just curious, did you ever see a correlation with that when you were a young kid?
Well, it's one of those sort of again, I'm the king of cliche comments, but the whole kind of you can't see the forest because of the trees type thing. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I'll be talking colors in a minute, but in hindsight, sure. In hindsight, strange dreams and things like that. Count, metallic looking devices in old timey situations where that didn't jive. It doesn't make any sense why they would have any sort of thing that would look like it would take a course or something. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff. But as of anything concrete, at least we're talking about regards of abduction scenarios, I can't say. I have a fair amount of, I'm the youngest of 7, so do the math. But I mean, there's a fair amount of my brothers and sisters that have sort of similar kind of quirky experiences, and we can't necessarily rule out whatever. But it's one of those just, what are you going to say? You know, you're going to just set your brothers and sisters down and go, you know, I think I've been on a, you know, little flying ship and got to see Elvis, and we went out for, you know, Venusian wine, and it was great. But
that's
you know,
the next movie of the week.
I say that. I say there it is. I mean, okay, yeah, as long as I get paid for it. But it's just a thing. Again, I say I'm a private guy, and I'm sitting here talking on the radio. But it's a thing where, you know, no one wants to be, and it's also a thing that you definitely want to go, yes, this is something I feel that's happened, because once you let that out of a bag, you really can't take that back. In time, I'm sure I'll probably look at, you know, psychic regression and stuff. It's strange because, you know, I've definitely dreams, and that would go in, like, as soon as I'm up, I would write it down, or I'd start typing it out, you know, on Microsoft Office or whatever, and that would shape story into a chapter for a book.
So you almost stream,
you know, that
data.
happened quite a bit, and I don't know if maybe I was, well, maybe so. I mean, I'm sure, you know, it's me, but it's a thing of, yeah. I mean, I would say that's possibly true. I'm not trying to say that I'm in contact with a higher, which I think we all are. I mean, if you want to get real about it,
oh, absolutely.
I think we are all by nature divine, and that's not to make errors. I think that sometimes we shortchange ourselves spirit when we have so much more. You know, the old saying, of course, you know, we're made of stardust, and that's pretty, but it's factual. You know, there's real truth in that. And I think once you kind of give yourself the ability to value yourself, I think whatever you call it, you know, love yourself or self-love or whatever. I don't know if I'm using the wrong term, but once you get past the conditioning, which I'm as guilty of that as anybody, you know, coming up in a very poor family, it's taken me a long time to go, you know, it's okay to have things. It's okay to want to, not necessarily saying amass a bunch of crap, pardon my language, but to, you know, it's okay to be happy. It's okay to learn. It's okay to create. It's okay to, you know, emote your feelings, and, you know, quit worrying about what everybody thinks, you know, because, you know, I don't know how you were raised, but being a very poor kid in Western Kentucky, you know, you were kind of a ghost to a point in your own hand, because you're like, I don't want to draw attention. I just want to get through this. And it took me, well, you know, close to being 40 years old before I was comfortable in my skin enough to kind of really be me. And I think sometimes people come into that very young. I never really had a super rebellious type thing. I was kind of the good son, you know, not like the movie, but I tried to be the good son, and I tried to be, you know, care for who I needed to care for, and try to put their needs before me. But you get to a point where you go, well, look, it's okay to use your gifts and use your things like that. And mine just happened to be in the realm of the paranormal and the spiritual, I guess. So we'll see what comes of it. You know, I'm excited, and because I don't know, because I love not knowing. I mean, I've talked with, you know, several people, and you being one of them, and learning new things. Like, I had no clue, and then I'm excited. You know, I'll get off the radio. I'm sure I'll go in there tonight, and I'll be talking to my wife Cheyenne, and she'll like, what's going on? I said, I just learned this and that, and it's like, you're so excited. I'm like, yeah, it's fun. It's like going to school and talking to cool people, and yeah, I mean, I'm a fanboy. I'm a geek, you know, and I'm having a real fun time with it. And what's so fun and what's so great about it is that it doesn't have to be all dark stuff. It doesn't have to be morbid all the time. Which, again, you know, I'm kind of a goth. That's sort of like my normal. But I've learned that it's okay to smile a little bit and get out and have fun with it, and look at that lighter side of it, and look at the positive side of it. And I think I'm trying to put that out, and I think I'm slowly getting that back. You know, I'm putting out positive vibes, and I'm getting them back. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's an awakening, and it's really nice to watch you. Like I was saying, you're growing and evolving on so many different levels of your own psyche. And I applaud you for that, because I can tell just by your conversation, you go into very deep levels of certain, certain formulas of communication, which tells me you've been doing an awful lot of spiritual work, or something very spiritual is awakening in you. So it's really nice to have these conversations. And I know we can dive into so many levels of where you've been, your books and everything, but I like to get a benchmark of you, because you are a very complex being that's really moving quickly into your own higher consciousness. So it's very, very interesting to talk to you and see how many levels to who you really are starting to activate. So it's very, very nice. I did want to ask you about, and I don't know if you have any information or not, but have you been paying attention to all the disappearances in the national forests? I mean, with your background connected to law enforcement, and I was just curious if you sensed anything about that whole thing, about the 411 disappearances.
I'm sitting there kind of with my mouth open. Literally, I literally today, yesterday, I was following a little bit of stuff about that, and I believe it was David Pallades.
Yeah,
I believe it was the gentleman of the missing 411 writer. Yeah, I was actually watching some stuff about that today, and that's what kind of made me go back to the whole thing in LBL, which is between the lakes, where they talk about a lot of Bigfoot sightings, and people sometimes will just disappear. Mm-hmm. And I'm not for sure the number of it, but that's sort of a common thing in there. And yeah, it's just so strange that the weird, the synergy, the strange back and forth that we have. It's kind of spooks me a little bit. It scares me. but yeah. I mean, I followed it, and it's extremely interesting and compelling. And it's scary. I mean, it's one of those things that, especially in this area, that's they call it the lake land, because there's so many lakes and rivers and nature walks and preserves and this and that, and what they call nature centers, and just sprawling. It goes all the way from here all the way down into like Dover, Tennessee. I mean, it's a large swath of land, and it brings a fair amount of revenue for it. And so they being the people, in charge, try to kind of, keep that out of the limelight, which I get it. Nobody, you have to do a certain amount of damage. It's especially due to the fact that, we have had UFO, things here, like in Kelly, Kentucky, which is not far from here. And you have people talk about, lots and things like that, and strange noises the night before, this and that, and then whatever. And then again, you tie it in with people disappearing, especially if, boom, they're gone. No one can find them, and they discover them, whatever, a few days later with, missing their clothes, or they find their clothes folded up, somewhere in the path. I'm thinking, man, you're completely out of your mind in OCD to decide to fold your clothes and just take a little naked walk, at least in especially in these woods. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's strangely compelling.
Yeah,
and
it's very, very
I'm
interesting.
very curious about it, because, and it ties in with, I don't know if someone's tapping into something, or I don't know if someone's kind of taking over, remotely taking over this and walking them off. Because why would you do that? Mm-hmm. Because I've always heard the line, don't be in the back. And there's nothing I'm going to see that's just going to have me just take off. Mm-hmm. I don't think, and just leave a party, especially if I don't know those woods.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. Because, they used would say, used would go, well, maybe they saw some wildlife, they saw something, people are taught, it's not just, they just cut you loose. They're like, stay to the trails. There's a reason there's a trail here, because, right, the deep woods is dangerous, and people can fall off, slide down stuff. Yeah, I've not followed so much what's happened necessarily like in the last few days. Has there been some new changes and some updates? What's going on?
No, nothing new. It's just something that I always find kind of haunting in the back of my head, because I look at it on and off. Once in a while I'll go through and see kind of see any correlations with what I could figure out insofar as why these people disappeared, or what's happened to them, or how they could be in one location and then all of a sudden be in someplace else. It's just something that I find interesting, and I just wanted your input on that to see. But yeah, I'm sure we'll find out more details down the road. But to me, it could be so many different things. I mean, from experimental technology to freaks in the forest. I mean, there's so much going on so many different levels. We just don't know. And I wanted to ask you where you're at. What is the main predator there for the forests and the You know, what do you watch out for animal wise?
Well, I mean, well, again, that depends on who you talk to. We have a fair amount of bobcats here. We have hordes of panthers in the area. Someone's even said that we were starting to have migrations of black bears coming up through here, coming up from eastern Tennessee. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, peddlers and all kinds of water snakes, cottonmouths, water moccasins, any of those things that kill you. But yeah, I would probably say that was probably a big one. I mean, obviously we have coyotes and stuff like that, but yeah, I mean, bobcats are definitely on the list. No, I mean, I don't want to live anywhere there's grizzlies. I don't live anywhere there's any of that. I can't do that. They're beautiful to look at, but I don't.
Well, that's true too. I think the most dangerous is the two-legged.
It's funny.
Go ahead.
No. You're absolutely right. It's funny. There was a thing that happened. We had a nephew that. I'll just say his first name. His name is Bobby. And years ago, we thought he was not gone that long, but he had went from where we lived on a country road to about 2.5 miles off into the woods, and it's like a toddler, and he ended up way off in the woods. Nobody could find where it was at. There was no hide or hair of him. And finally, after a while, this kid wandered out of this dark part of the woods. They checked him out, for obviously everything. Checked him out. Nothing was wrong with him, but he didn't have a mark on him. This was a barefoot, diaper wearing little muscle shirt kid. I didn't ever really think about it, but it could have been something related. Like, he didn't come back with some outlandish story that he was picked up or lost time or nothing. But it's so quick. It blows my mind because, like you said, you can be on a trail and then we've had people turn up, fall off of boats or slip off a bluff or something like that, and you're going to find some of them because sometimes animals get to you in the woods by the time they get you. But yeah, it's really strange, and that's the deal about it, is that there's so many like really old deep forests in this area that some people just don't go in. Again, ties back into the old Native American legends of it's sacred, you go in, you do what you do, and you get out. Honestly, I don't know if we were ever really meant to settle here.
Right. Yeah, that's something to look at. Well, also burial sites. I don't know if they have any burial sites there that maybe are unnoticed, perhaps cloaked to some degree.
Sure. I mean, and I imagine that a fair amount of, people had fallen here and there, and just by natural causes or whatnot, and sure, they probably couldn't carry them back, or for whatever reason had to kind of make some sort of makeshift grave because they couldn't get them back to, wherever they live, maybe in Tennessee or Missouri or something. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's so much more that was going on here. I mean, because if you talk about, I'd actually, have you heard about like the Native Americans that supposedly had been discovered in Kentucky that spoke Welsh? Had you heard anything about that?
No.
Oh, this is okay. Well, this is cool. It's exciting. I can tell you something that I just recently learned about. Was speaking to a friend of mine, Barry Gaunt, and he's a researcher around Bowling Green, and we were discussing Native American things, and I was talking about the Trail of Tears that comes through here, and we were talking about that they had actually early on, back in the day, had found a tribe of Native Americans, but they spoke very fluent Welsh along with their native tongue, which made no sense because most people was like, well, Columbus discovered American and this and that, which if you talk, you hear the old sagas and stuff, they talk about, Vikings coming through and different crews. So I don't know. I mean, I honestly think we probably have had so many different feet on the ground from a whole lot of different regions that there's probably countless histories that we don't know about, this level. And I think it's why we keep finding stuff like that. And I think we're going to continue to do that, just with the fact that we don't know half of what we think we know. I mean,
Right.
that's just the facts. And the quicker that we kind of come to grips with that and lose our ego, which we need to lose our ego anyway, but the quicker that we kind of just embrace knowledge is knowledge and information is information. It's not king of the hill. It's not who was here first or whatever, because obviously if you dig deep enough, they're going to find somebody else. And that's not to speak down to anybody. It's just a thing of, facts are facts, and people, come from all over.
Right.
So, and at the root of it, we're all explorers, and be it spiritually
Exactly.
or whatever. So
Yeah,
that's
I
just-
agree with that. Well, that's
Yeah.
what's so weird about what's happening to society today. They're so fragmented. I can't believe some of the stuff that's going on with people, but I think that it's going to get resolved to some degree. I don't know to what level people will suffer in the process, and that's something to look at down the road. But it is interesting to go and explore these areas and see what the old signatures have to say. And you're very in tune, you're very psychic, so you pick up on those ancient signatures and those frequencies and those templates. What I call templates, they're like little structures of crystalline data streams or something. I mean, it's just very, very interesting to me. And what about Skinwalker Ranch? I know there's a lot of talk about Skinwalker Ranch for a very long time. And have you ever thought about going out to investigate that? I know you kind of stay close to where you are.
Okay, see, now that's I don't know how you know this. It's I literally have goosebumps at this moment. My voice is wavered. You freaked me. You legitimately freaked me out, Solaris.
Okay.
On my phone, I was actually watching a video. L.A. I mispronounced his name.
Marzulli or no?
Marzulli, thank you.
Is that who it is?
And I was actually watching a thing where he was talking to a Navajo shaman, and they will not even say the word skinwalker. They just say SWs. And it was a thing where they were definitely have been having more activity with it and all that. I was in the Four Corners area in New Mexico, and this is why it's hit me like really super weird right now. It's like, you're in my head. What's going on? But I swear to God,
I've got to stop doing that. Go ahead.
And wipe your feet because my head's messy. But
Okay.
I was in the Four Corners area, and I was back when I was working in steel construction, and I was a young guy. This was one of my first out of state jobs. I'm talking, I was green, howdy y'all. I mean, green. Did not know how to behave in the city. Just like Opie went to town, and there was just like a lot of times in different situations, a lot of times minorities or whatever will work hotels. And this is not a judgment, it's just it's what it is. And in that particular place, there was a lot of Native Americans that worked at the hotel. And there was a lady, and it was a very strange lady, and she was a very strong woman, real quiet, but you could tell in her eyes she had dealt with a lot of stuff. She had a mark from her left, just above her left eye. It went across her nose. I'm kind of going across my face, kind of remembering it, to about mid cheek on the right side. And I don't know if she was cut with something, some sort of accident. And the guys would joke about her, and color stuff like hatchet face and whatnot. And she just had a very strange way about her. And there was a time, again, when we were down there, I could have almost sworn that I saw her, not her demeanor, but her facial structure. And this sounds so out there. Almost like her eyes and stuff almost shifted slightly. And I'm not talking like a reptilian thing, but it had an animalistic look to it. And I was just like, okay. I didn't know what to say. It's not that I was afraid, but I was aware. I was like, okay, cool. Go in peace and this and stuff. And I kind of said that in my head to her, and she just kind of turned and walked on. I don't know, maybe she thought I was part of the kind of making fun of her party or whatever, but I wasn't. But she definitely stayed off to the side. It was almost like she was watching what was going on. And I don't know if maybe she was aware of kind of what little ability I had, but it was very strange. And then I didn't really even know much about skinwalkers and all that stuff. Obviously, I think it was Wolfen, right? Was that the movie that Whitley Strieber did years and years ago? But I didn't really know much about that. And I didn't know that was a real thing until I really started researching it into, like my 30s, early 30s and stuff. But yeah, it was very, very weird. I would love to go, check out, a reservation and learn about it. I would really like to go to like a sweat lodge myself, but I think that would be really cool. Well, it's one of those things. One. Well, it's one of these things too that I don't want to. I'm always very mindful that I don't want people to think that I'm like a cultural tourist, that I'm trying to, demean or sully something that's sacred to them. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, someone says, "Hey, we are having a sweat lodge tonight," or "Hey, we are having a whatever sacred circle or a drum circle. We would like to have you be there." I'm like, I'm on it. But it's just one of those things, again, it's that thing of I'm very mindful. And,
right. Well, it's respect. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good that you are. But you also have the lineage, too. It's in your bloodline there. And it's also about spirit and your approach to any sacred ceremony, regardless of what kind it is. But, yeah, and they can read that. I mean, most intuitives, most shamans can tell intuitively, they can look at you and know that you're sincere versus the tourist,
Well, there's something that I'd heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, that, and again, I am just repeating this, so please don't nobody take me as trying to be offensive, that the steps of becoming a skinwalker, that supposedly you had to take the life of one of your family members. Now, I've heard of people doing it in the old Wolfman type way of, putting on like a skin and doing some sort of incantation, which is more of a magical thing as opposed to, I guess, you know what I mean? Like, meaning using an incantation or using a potion or using something like, as opposed to a straight up spiritual religious thing, which,
right.
Some people would say, well, skinwalkers, that is more of an aberrant kind of dark magic type thing. But I don't know. I mean, I think you could probably do that. And I think it depends on your soul and your heart. I think you could do that and just, run the woods and feel extremely communal with it. But right. I think if you bring darkness to it, I think it's definitely going to go bad. So
well, it's interesting. There is a lot of superstition around the terminology skinwalker, and also the affiliation with witches and curses and other things. And of course, I have a background in craft and also a lot of other things. But I was told a long time ago I had immunity to skinwalkers, and I have no idea why. I mean, I've never killed a family member or anything weird. So the only thing I can think of is that it was through the program I went through with the induction in 2004 that did something to calibrate me to it. But I don't know if it's true or not. I'll never probably encounter one, and I really don't choose to. But that's what I was told a long time ago. So not sure. But I'm fearless when it comes to stuff like this. I feel like we can speak a universal language to whatever life forms are out there. I really get that. At least I can. And I think that when we understand how to navigate and communicate with these other types of beings, I think that we will have a neutral kind of a formula so that we can all work together versus polarizing in different dimensional fields, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, again,
it's kind of like a highway, you just learn to coexist and navigate. But right now people are spooked because of, well, first of all, programming, and also because it's different. It's a new experience to them, especially the supernatural, the paranormal, or for many who haven't been exposed to it.
Well, I feel that there is a beyond necessarily like, sitting down, well, how are you doing, Mr. Rabbit? Well, I'm doing quite fine, thank you. I think that I don't know why this is coming to my head, but it's almost like a chemical language, like a communication that maybe is transferred back and forth in like pheromones and scents and very primal, basic, not even postures, but sort of this beyond. Well, maybe you could say it was energy, but definitely unspoken. Sometimes, you can sometimes feel the intent of something,
Right.
and not even see it. Like you walk, well, I mean, I can come around a wall and feel if, sometimes I'm like, I think there's an animal over here, or I think there's something, there's a dog there or whatever. And it's like studying you, like, okay, what are you going to do? And then you kind of acknowledge it. And, sometimes I'd even kind of go in my mind, I'm not here to harm you. I'm just here to pass. And it doesn't bother you.
Right.
But you get scared, and then you put that, get on out of here and all that kind of, whatever, like, you don't deserve to be here. I'm a human. I'm better than you. And then they're going to feel offended, on whatever level that they're working on. Yeah.
Yes, that stream of consciousness. You're right on. You know what it sounds like when you're talking about that? It's like your aura's expanded, and I'm sure yours is. So when it's that expanded, you're reading the perimeters around you before you even get there with your energy field. It's like your antennas are out and your feelers are out, which is very, very awesome. It's like the Zen master. And that's true because you're picking up the whole area. It's like an antenna. You're picking up the energetic signatures around you to analyze. At least that's the way I see it anyway.
Well, I will say this in regards of, when I talked about like using dowsing and rods and things like that, divining rods, for me, again, because we've mentioned before about like when we first would go out and investigate, we would take maybe an EMF meter or maybe just a voice recorder or whatever, and I would walk into an area kind of with my hand maybe waist high, maybe slightly about in the middle part of your chest height, and almost fell out in front of me like you're walking in the dark, or you're feeling for a cold spot or feeling for a warm spot, like you would be in the water trying to find where it's warm and cold. And my barometer, for whatever reason, was very, very attuned to that. So when I used divining rods, it was pretty close to that, and you kind of still use the same vibrations and the same sort of pressures and quirky little, I don't know what you call it, little nuances that you feel through the rods, vibrations or pressure or heat or cold. At least that's how it worked for me. I don't know how it worked for you. But so sometimes when you would use a machine, it felt really artificial, and it kind of, I'm trying to find the right word for it. It felt kind of dirty. It felt like this isn't, why bring that into that? You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, here I can feed my baby with my hand, or here I can have this robot hand and do this. And that.
You're the fine-tuned instrument. Yeah, you're already the instrument. No, I get that. That's very true.
Yeah, why even introduce that into the equation? Which I know a lot of people love that, and that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm very connected like that, and I don't know and it's only gotten worse or better as how you look at it as I've done research and as I've read up on esoteric things, and sometimes just get very, very still. I wouldn't necessarily call it meditation, which I'm sure it is exactly what it is, but I just don't call it that. And I get really, really still. As we do this interview, I'm you probably don't care, but I'm sitting here barefoot, and
that's great. That's good.
I like to feel very grounded, and I'm sure these people were probably thinking, "Man, who is this crazy hillbilly talking about walking around with no shoes?" Which obviously it's Kentucky, so you can make a joke, but.
But you know what? Actually, more people need to be doing that. That's really good for you. Ground in earth.
Again, it mellows me completely out. And anytime I try to do a show, here or wherever, I try to do that. And if I can have the windows open for a while and let the natural air come in, don't have AC on or whatever, and have the natural smells and the natural ozone in the air, and it just sort of cleans out whatever be it. And I don't know, maybe I'm doing some sort of subconscious version of a poor man's cleansing, but it works, and that's all I know. All I know is my gut tells me it's good. And I don't know if it's some sort of quirky, like you talk about, genetic memory, muscle memory of a mystical nature. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't take it that high-minded because, again, I'm a simple guy. But
you intuitively know what to do, though. That's the thing. You just know, spiritually speaking.
Well, maybe so. I mean, but
that way.
I don't think it's anything. I don't think that's necessarily anything special. That's not to say that there's definitely practitioners and people who, like yourself, are extremely versed in this. I'm like a child on a lot of this, and I try to come to it as a child because. Children learn quick.
That's the best way to be. Pure energy. It's pure energy.
and you come to it openly, and you don't try to bring any sort of baggage, because for me, that's the worst thing. It's the worst thing. I've tried to teach people, like, well, you know how it was, you know, you're trying to teach someone militarily, or teaching how to use a weapon or how to use anything. It's like, well, hey, who's any lifetime hunters here, or whatever? Okay, yeah, no. Okay, forget everything you've learned. We have to teach you the proper way of doing this now, because someone's uncle, somebody's whatever probably taught them. And it's just like that. It's everything you thought was this. Nah, kick it out the door, because you're going into the big leagues now. You're going into self-discovery. You're going into openness. You're going into acceptance of the whole of the duality of the spirit and all that. And well, again, I know I sound extremely preachy, but, and I'm not even saying it in a religious point of view. I'm talking about it in sort of the soul craft, if that's even a word, of learning yourself and fine tuning yourself. Because for me anyway, once I do that, it opens me up to very easily go into places and deal with things and research things, and things will come to me. I'm sure, like, as well as you will just, boom, it'll come to you. Just like you were talking about the thing about the Skinwalker, which is still extremely freaking weird, and all that stuff. I'm waiting for you to tell me what I ate for dinner. But so, but
I'll go there.
Well, it was roast. So, but
okay.
And it was good too. But but it's one of those things where yeah, man. I mean, I'm getting to the point where even in the research, because the way I'm writing, I find the way I'm writing is differently, because you know, I love ghosts and I love the spooky and I love the chiller vibe of it. You know, I'm always going to be that guy, that kid or whatever. But, you know, like, again, like my next books after these will be about, you know, strange things that happen, you know, throughout the counties of Kentucky, and strange parts of history, and strange, you know, and unusual, and the mystical and the marvelous. And, you know, who knows? I mean, I might even begin writing books about angelic beings and things like that, you know, just have it. Why not? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're exploring and expanding so rapidly. Yeah, don't limit yourself. That's for sure. And it does seem like you're going to another overtone of something else on a bigger scale. So yeah, I look forward to reading these books. So I'm going to put a fire under your butt. Now you're going to have to do this, you know? So I always like to crack the whip on my guests. If they're telling me they're going to put a book out, I'm expecting to have it in my hand by next year.
Oh yeah.
You have approximately how many months? We're in almost October. I'm just kidding. But when
pressure.
You are ready, you are coming back to hyperspace and also Ravenstar's Witching Hour if you feel guided.
Man, I'd love it. And, you know, I've always feel very at home in here. Yeah. And like you said, it's a thing where, you know, we've talked back and forth, and we're pretty open with each other. And I feel like we're friends. You know, I feel like I can really open up with you and share things with you. Just like you said, like we're just sitting out on the back porch, having a glass of tea and just watching the stars. It's good stuff. Nice.
Well, where are the crickets? Because I love those too.
Oh, they're outside.
Yeah, I really love that. You know what you remind me of, and it's really nice. You have a simplicity about you, but it's an expansive simplicity. You know what I mean? It's just appreciating the moments of life, appreciating things around you. That's a big deal in the world today. You know, you're able to do that. You're able to recalibrate into that world, and I think that's really nice, because more people just open up your window, take your shoes off, you know, let your feet ground into the world, into the earth, relax, breathe, right? So all the things that you're doing right now are so healthy and so enlightened, you probably don't even realize it, because it's second nature for you, but very important.
Well, there was something, and again, a lot of this comes from my mother's side. You know, she was very tied in with nature and this sort of thing, and it was it was just, you know, she was very much a nature spirit, very much an outdoorsy person. And she had said something, I forgot how she put it, but basically, more or less, it's one of these adages of, and I'm sure someone else had said it, probably better than my mom, but it was something along these lines of, you never have more than when you give everything away. You never, something or another, some sort of weird, quirky, folksy thing like that. But that come from a Depression era person who knew a life that with a lot, you know, what would be considered a third world country, and type of upbringing. And so simple things, like a cup, like a hot cup of coffee, that was a miracle. Little simple things, clean water, a pair of shoes, that was high cotton, as they used to say here. And I don't know, I've always tried to hold to that and keep I don't know, don't get too high, try not to get too highfalutin, as I think my mom would have said, don't.
Yeah, stay humble. Yeah.
Got to. There's no reason not to be.
Blessings. I agree with you. And I think counting your blessings is a really big deal. People are spoiled, like we were just talking about with the technology and the iPhones. I mean, people really just take time to be grateful for what you have. And, I think that they need to reset their spiritual compass. I'm not going to be preachy either, but I'm just saying, just from my own observation, I think that would be the best way to go. And be kind to your fellow man, woman, regardless of politics. I'm so tired of that. So everybody's got to learn to get along again. I don't know how that's going to happen. But
well, I mean, it will happen because there's a thing. Well, I look at it like either waves coming in and then waves go out, and then another ones will come in and another ones will go out. Air's in, air's out. A rubber band expands to a point that it can't give anymore, and it pops back. You have that whole time to live, time to die. I know I sound like a 60s song, but there's that thing about it that things will right themselves. I'm not saying don't get involved and don't try to better things, but generally I think humanity pulls itself back because overall we know that if we don't save ourselves, who's going to? And there's again, like I talk a lot about duality. You have to sometimes face darkness to appreciate the light, and you have to sometimes come through some dark stuff to like to get past all the stuff. Because like you talk about conditioning, there's a reason that I watched a television show and there was like 6 iPhone commercials. And I'm not trying to dog people's iPhones out, but it's a thing where there was that, and there's like, oh, well, there's this new series, and there's this, that, and then of course they're talking about how much they hate the president, or they're talking about how much they hate, whatever, Antifa or different, the other end of the spectrum groups. And it's just like, man, we're really got to get together. It's a conditioning. There was a show that I had been watching earlier. Now, if you tell me you're watching this, I'm going to friggin' flip. There was a show called They Live back in the day.
Oh, I've seen that. I love that movie.
Great, and one of the best fight scenes ever.
Yes, and I love, was it Roddy the Piper? Is that his name?
Roddy Piper, yeah.
Did you
know he totally ad-libbed that bubblegum line?
Yeah, I heard about that. He was also into the supernatural, wasn't he? Or if I'm not mistaken, I think he was.
Well, yeah, with his background, that's what people don't understand. Welsh, Irish, and Scottish, and all those war stories, and the Banshee, and the Devil Dogs, and the, come on now, that's good stuff. That's old school. What's the word I'm looking for? Just grassroots,
folktales or
witchy stuff. Yeah, because we had Ozark witches, and we had all that stuff, and what was called holistic medicine. Guys like Casey, that came from areas right around here.
Oh, I love Casey. Yeah.
Oh, Casey was great, and I'd actually had visited his grave in Hopkinsville, and it wasn't any sort of like ghouly, thing, but it was just like, I know he had introduced the spiritual side and the more holistic side. Well, they call him the father of holistic medicine for a reason. And, I just told him, I said, you never knew me. But there's a lot of stuff that is going on now that wouldn't have happened without you. And I just wanted to thank you. I don't know why I felt the need to do that. Maybe it's just a Southern properness, maybe. I think you need to come with a kind of a contrite spirit to kind of quote a Bible verse, which I don't often, but if you cannot, it's hard for you to hate anybody, even if your views are different. If you walk in here and says, look, I do not know you, but I can tell you care about your family. I can tell you care about the people around you. And I think what you want is the best for everybody. And beyond that, I can't judge you. And then it sort of takes the spit out of people. And what I'm saying? It's kind of hard to, at least for me, even when I was younger and I'd get mad at somebody, I could not hit somebody who would not fight me. I was never a first punch guy.
Right, it's counterfight, yeah. I mean, basically self-defense, yeah. Right,
and it was actually a very kind of pacifist thing. It's not that they necessarily were scared. They're just like, I'm not going to do that. And I remember when I was a little bitty, I was like, why would you fight me? He said, there's no reason for us to fight, and it just totally took the wind out of my sails. And as I got older, I was like, wow, man, that other kid really had it figured out. I was spinning my wheels, trying to deal with anger issues as a little kid because, again, come up with a lot of scary stuff and kind of a family that had, some dependency problems and stuff like that. So, kind of a screwed up kid from a screwed up family is going to have screwed up issues. But it took me years to find that cool. And that's why I'm at the point I am now, that I've pushed so hard to find that plateau just above all the negative. I'm not saying my vibrations are anything to crow about, but I just want to get just a little bit above the noise.
And you're a spy bird. That's what I call it, fly above the whole scenery. And what's really interesting is you've been through so many different corridors. I mean, you've been around the facilities where you've seen all this ugliness connected to imprisonment and all the things that go along with that, and then the supernatural aspects of it. And now you're here and you're shining a lot brighter and more enlightened and very smooth. And I think that's very important. And what you're saying is so meaningful because I agree with you too. People have to stop polarizing. We can't do this anymore. And the one thing that and I know, there's a reason people investigate the supernatural and the paranormal. People died tragically. And there's an afterbirth, or whatever you want to call it. There's things happening on multidimensional realms that are fragmentations of that. And that's what they're creating right now. As you were saying, it's a self-replicating thing. And it does need to stop. So however we get it to cease is a good thing. And I'm appreciative of you. You do fabulous work and you're growing and evolving. Every time I interview you, we go so deep and we go so expansive. And I really appreciate that. Maybe we didn't cover some of the things we probably could have, but I thought this was such a good conversation. I didn't want to stop you. Once you start going on those waves, you're really awesome.
Well, I mean, you're always welcome to reel me in. It's one of these things. Obviously, I want people to, if they feel so inclined, and I know it sounds very proper and very, very southerny. Well, if you want to buy a book, don't trouble yourself now. But I mean, obviously,
buy the books. Let's plug your books because we are going to run out of time here in the next 4 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, now, obviously, again, Hauntings of the Western Lunatic Asylum. That's through Permuted Press, carried by Simon & Schuster, through Amazon and all those different places. And Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary. And, please check it out. And I want your feedback. That's the biggest thing. Again, contact me at stevieasher.com or at ILASHER at Yahoo. That's eyelashers at yahoo.com. And, even if you want to contact me, just tell me what you liked or maybe what you thought could have been better. That's great because I'm definitely learning as I'm going. And I'd really like to hear when someone tells me, because I've had this, someone go, I have a son or a brother that's been in there and he was going through a lot of darkness, but this gave him something to focus on, that he didn't feel he was crazy seeing this and that he had a certain amount of knowing and a certain amount of vision, so yeah. And, contact me. And if you guys want me to come do conventions, you want me to come do an appearance, I'm all about it.
Excellent. Are you going to be doing any presentations? Do you have anything happening in the next month or so or anything we need to know about?
Yeah, actually, I totally forgot about that. October the 8th in Paducah, Kentucky, there is the Galaxy of Heroes convention, and it's going to have me and some other writers, and it's also kind of ducktails with a kind of a cosplay thing, which touches in all kinds of different people dressing as different characters and whatnot. And that's going to be in Paducah, Kentucky on the 13th, and then on the 20th, I will be at the George Kuhn Library doing basically sort of a meet and greet. I'll definitely be selling some books, but I'm just there to do kind of like we're doing here, meeting people.
Very nice.
Positive energies back and forth.
Excellent. So anything on Halloween? You planning on anything spooky? Any kind of investigation or anything we need to know about?
Okay. Well, actually, I will be doing an appearance on one of the local radio stations here. And nice. I do plan on doing a show that's driven on ghost stories from people that call in and tell me ghost stories, and probably just enjoy the family, maybe pass out some candy, maybe watch a few scary movies.
All right, well, that sounds wonderful. And I have to say it's been wonderful to have you on board, Steve, so thank you so much for joining us. It really is. And best of luck with your wonderful family, too. And everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. Stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dundra and Becky coming up next. That's selling you on tonight from Down Under with their awesome show, as they always do. They will be discussing immortality. So that dovetails right into what we were talking about. Steve, thank you again. It's been wonderful to have you on board. Looking forward to have you back again soon.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure, too. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates.